On episode 160 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we will discuss shingles. It's a terrible virus that hits many of us later in life. You can find the show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/160. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about shingles. A little over a week ago, that my mother has shingles, and she's really suffering from the pain of it and the itching and all the things that go along with that. And I started to realize as I was having this conversation with her, I guess two basic things. One was I really didn't know a lot about shingles because all I really knew about shingles was what I had seen on TV with the new commercials that they're running with, Terry Bradshaw, and how he suffered from shingles. But I think the other part of it was I didn't really understand that shingles was not like normal chickenpox. I knew it was related to chickenpox, but it's not something that you just have for a couple of weeks and then it's gone. You can literally have shingles and the pain and all the itching and all the things that go along with it for months. And it actually can turn into some pretty serious problems if it's not well cared for and it happens to go the wrong way. I think the second thing that kind of came about this was, well, I'm getting ready to plan a trip up to North Carolina to see my mom for Thanksgiving with the family. And so the question that I had was, well, okay, am I at risk being exposed to her having shingles for me to get shingles? And again, it was just something I didn't know. And I'm the kind of person when I don't know something, I'm going to go out and try to figure it out. So rather than risk my family or anything like that, because again, she might still have it when we're there in November, which is one of the sad parts about me thinking, okay, she's got shingles, she'll be over it in a week or so. Well, that's not the case. So before I really get into all of this, I want to be very clear. I am not a doctor, and I don't pretend to be a doctor. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a personal trainer that understands that there's a big, big tie between health and fitness. And obviously, we've talked a little bit in the last episode about injury. And if you get injured, quite frankly, you're not going to be in the gym. Well, get shingles, you might not be in the gym either, depending on how severe the case is. This could be something that puts you down pretty quickly. Now, for most people under 50, the risk is relatively low. But as you start getting older, the risk goes up and up. And the older you get, the higher the risk is. And so I want to take some time to kind of go over what I learned as I was kind of doing my research on all of this. And again, this is just research. I encourage you, please do, if you think you've got some risks or some concerns here, do the research yourself, talk to your doctor, because I am not a doctor. And again, I'm just really sharing what I learned through my reading and how I'm going to consider addressing my health as we go forward. So I guess I should start out with what the heck is shingles. And like I said, I knew that shingles was related to chickenpox. And if you've had chickenpox, then you have the risk of getting shingles. What I didn't know was that basically what happens is when you get chickenpox, your body is literally taking the chickenpox and it's beating it down to a point, but the chickenpox then kind of embeds itself in your spinal cord and your brain. And it just sits there dormant effectively for years and years and years. And it's waiting for its opportunity when your immune system gets weaker, when you're older, to come back. And that's literally when the shingles come back, is when you're a little bit older and your immune function isn't quite as strong as it used to be. It's just opportunistic of the same disease that you already beat, just coming back with full force. I had chickenpox when I was a little bit older. So my little brother, who was at the time maybe 3 or 4, he had like 4 or 5 spots on his face, and he was fine in a few days. My brother and sister that were a little bit older, closer to my age, they suffered for a couple of weeks. But man, I was a preteen, and I was miserable. I was miserable for weeks. Well, compound that 1,000-fold when you're 50, 60, 70, 80. And that's what we're talking about here. Now, another thing I didn't know was that basically shingles is a form of herpes virus. So realize, okay, there's lots of actually viruses that are in the herpes family. In fact, there's well over 100. But humans are really only susceptible to about 9. At least that's what I was able to read. And I'll go over some of the more common ones. I'll list all of them in the show notes, so if you want to kind of go out and take a look at them. But the first one is the one that I was most familiar with as a herpes virus, was the fever blister. And that's because I've had a fever blister for a long period of time. Probably got it from my mom, but it's fairly common. A lot of people have these fever blisters, and they pass them on, and you can get them very young in life, and you carry them. And so I've had some pretty bad outbreaks of it. I can kind of feel when it's happening, and then I just make sure I protect myself, I protect other people. But that's the fever blister. The other one is herpes type 2, which is basically herpes, the kind of sexually transmitted disease herpes that you may be familiar with. It's predominantly genitals, but you can also get it on your mouth. The next one then is this one. It's Varicella zoster. And again, it's a herpes virus that causes chickenpox and then later in life, potentially shingles. And then there's Epstein-Barr virus, which is mononucleosis. And so those are the 4 most common versions that you'll hear about. All of those I've seen at periods of time in my life, so I kind of understand what all those are all about. Others are a lot less common, but they're all there. So, again, just realize that there are multiple types of herpes virus, and one is not necessarily related to the other. One does not act or look like the other necessarily. They all have their own symptoms and whatnot. And again, even with chickenpox, it's the same virus, but over a period of time, the way that they manifest themselves at a given different age is predominantly different. So an older person can get chickenpox, but again, it's not shingles just because they're older. It is very dangerous for an older person to get chickenpox. But then again, with the shingles, it's something that's now embedded into your spinal cord and your brain, and it's waiting to come back when it gets that opportunity. So to kind of resurface that, kind of restate that is, again, if you've had chickenpox, you now have the risk of getting shingles. Okay. In fact, it's estimated that 50% of people over 80 will get shingles if they had chickenpox. Okay, so that's a lot of people. I mean, basically, if you had chickenpox and you live past 80, which I think we're here to do, because this is really a show about health and fitness. I think we all want to be around till after 80. But just realize, flip a coin, and one of the two of us is going to get it. So that is a large percentage of people. And so something to really, kind of wrap your head around how you want to approach your health and fitness as it relates to this disease. Okay? You're going to be at higher risk of getting it when your immune system is depressed. So it's really incumbent on us to make sure that we're either going to do something directly about this virus, or we're going to focus on making sure that our immune system is robust and strong. Okay? I want to take kind of a step back, and I want to talk a little bit about the symptoms of this, because, with shingles, it's more than just a painful rash. Now, the rash typically, it can be anywhere on your body, but the rash typically is on your torso. And again, it's extremely painful from what I've heard of explanations of this. And my mom, that's exactly what she told me. She's in a lot of pain. Now, if you get it on your face, around your eyes, it could potentially lead to blindness. And because of the nature of this coming around the brain and the spinal cord, it kind of has this ability that it may potentially mess with you cognitively. It may mess with your brain, with your nervous system. And that's what the pain is it's a nerve reaction. So what's going on here is nervous. And so it can be very debilitating and life-threatening, effectively. Ruin the quality of your life going forward. So you want to make sure that if you do have an outbreak of this is not something you just try to tough out. This is important stuff you need to go talk to your doctor about, because this stuff, it can get bad quick. And if you're immune depressed and then you basically get this stuff, it's something you need to jump on really, really quickly. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of don'ts, and then I'm going to shift to some things that you can do. And, obviously most don'ts have a corresponding do. It's just kind of the nature of most things. So if I'm repeating myself a little bit, I'll try to not do so much of that. But let's just kind of go through this. I wanted to try and make sure I got a really good kind of coverage of some things that you need to avoid and why. and then some things that you really should consider, and again, why. Okay, so the first thing is don't avoid treatment. Like I said, this is not something that you can tough out. This is something that you're going to need to go get treatment for. You're going to need to deal with the underlying issues. You're going to need to work on getting your immune system stronger, and you're going to want to squash this thing as quickly as you possibly can. Okay, there is a direct relationship between stress and immune function. And I'll take just a second to kind of go through this, is to realize what happens when you get into a stress response is that there's a flood of cortisol that goes on in your body. Now, cortisol serves a very particular function in our body. It basically serves the function of turning everything non-essential off. Because when you're in stress, it's a situation where your body, your brain and your body are thinking, I've got to get the heck out of here, or I've got to start fighting. But all your energy is pouring into the get away or fight or flight thing. And that's a survival mechanism that we used to really need. We don't need so much anymore, but it's still there. So when it starts turning things off, one of the things it will turn off is your immune function. Because it's not really important that a wound heal properly and not get infected right now if you're about to get another wound and die. So your body's thinking, I got to prevent another wound. It's not thinking, I've got to heal and try to do this other stuff. So it's not going to multitask. It's going to do flight, and it's not going to be worried about a lot of other functions in your body. So cortisol serves that purpose, a very important purpose, but unfortunately, again, it's not an immune booster. So if you're in chronic stress, if you're dealing with a lot of stress, your immune system very likely is impaired. So, again, try to avoid situations where you're under a tremendous amount of stress. And if you can remove stress from your life, you should. The next is there's an amino acid called arginine. And it's in foods that typically would be very, very healthy for you, like chocolate, like nuts, like coconut and bone broth and gelatin. Foods that, typically people want to have more in their diet, but this particular amino acid really does kind of stoke the fires with regards to shingles. So if you have shingles or any other kind of herpes outbreak, that's foods that you need to avoid during that period of time, because those are going to really kind of gear this thing up to be burn a little brighter. So try to avoid foods, those types of foods during that period of time. And then, this is unfortunate, but if you're a fertile female and you're going through your menstrual cycle, very likely that can spur outbreaks, just the basis of the chemicals and the hormone changes in your body. Doctors don't really know exactly why, but obviously, you want to have good, healthy reproductive systems through your life. So you just, again, have to kind of be cognizant of the fact that being female kind of puts you at a predisposition to, particularly if you're still kind of going through that process, if you're not over that yet through menopause, then effectively each time you go through that cycle, your body's going through a cycle where there's a potential risk of outbreak. Okay, so some things to do. You can get inoculated. There is a vaccine that you can take. Now, this vaccine has side effects, and it is not 100%. So even if you have the vaccine, you could still get shingles. Now, it might be a little bit weaker, it might not be quite as bad. So, this is a personal decision for you to make for your health of rather the consequences relative to your risk, relative to what you and your doctor decide. You just kind of have to work your way through this, and maybe this is something you wait a little while if if you're younger, not necessarily something you have to do straight away. But as you get older and older, it's just something that you should keep kind of bringing up from time to time, and maybe over time again, maybe with the number of people that get this, maybe it just makes sense they're going to come up with something better later, and that might be a great time to do it. But realize there is a vaccine for this that you can take that will reduce your risk, although there are some side effects. Okay, if you get an outbreak, there are antivirals that you can take. Okay, so just realize that you want to work with your doctor, and if you're having an outbreak, they may prescribe some antivirals. Go through that consideration. Go ahead and consider using those, because again, you really want to jump on this. Now, in addition to the ones that are effectively medicine, there are some basic adaptogens and things that, you can use that are natural remedies effectively. They've been used for thousands and thousands of years that can do a lot to boost your immunity. So don't feel like you have to take a medicine. There are other ways around this. And so again, just an opportunity for you to have a conversation with your doctor to make the right health decision for you. As I mentioned before, chronic stress is really something that's going to weaken your immune system over time. So having effective stress management techniques, things that you can do to keep your stress levels as low as possible over time, particularly as we get a little bit older, there's just a lot of opportunities there for us to depress our immune system to a point where we're in trouble. So, just really work on some protocols that help you reduce stress. It could be meditation, it could be yoga, you could go for walks, spend time in nature, pet a dog, pet a cat, whichever is your preference. But spend some time really working on reducing your overall stress level, and that will help you maintain a stronger immune system. Now, it is our immune system that's kind of keeping shingles at bay. So, we want to make sure that if there's anything out there, and it can be a toxin. So some people have sensitivities to mold and whatnot. It can be heavy metals. So, paying attention, getting good quality food, avoiding situations where, you're going to overstress your body one way or another. So, if you have moldy house, maybe you're not the best individual to be up there cleaning that out. Maybe getting a professional that can come in with the right equipment and getting them to do the work. You're not going to be exposed to that toxic mold. That's not going to depress your immune system and put you in a bad situation. And then we talked about arginine as a bad amino acid to take. But there is a contra to that. It's basically yin and yang of this amino acid set, and that's called lysine. You may have heard about it. Lysine is readily available, and lysine helps tamp down on that. So much like arginine was stoking it up, this kind of tamps it down. And so one of the key things I would say is, lysine is going to be available in a lot of different foods, particularly meats, animal proteins. But if you want to take a lysine product, it's strongly encouraged that you take that off cycle of the food. So if you could take it with food, that's fine. You just realize it's just really not going to be as potent as if you went ahead and took the dosage that you want to take at a time when you're on an empty stomach. So, if you're going to take lysine, just again, take it at a time when you're going to get the most benefit out of it. And that's typically going to be on an empty stomach, not with other food. I mentioned adaptogens, so I'd strongly encourage you to kind of do a little bit of research on some of those. There's a lot of them that go back thousands of years that are great opportunities for you to address your immune function in a natural, holistic way that doesn't have the side effects that a lot of the medications may have. And then finally, I want to say it's important to make sure that you're keeping up on certain nutrients. And the ones that are particularly highlighted in the research I looked at was vitamin D. And by that, that's typically when someone says vitamin D, they mean vitamin D3. And then taking that with K2 and with calcium, together those three kind of give you the kind of the big three on this. Now, the interesting thing is these three particular nutrients are really important for bone health. And there's no real correlation yet, but there was some correlation, but no one really understands why. But good bone health typically is a deterrent to getting an outbreak of the shingles. So if you're not taking care of your bones, and again, these nutrients do that, and I don't know if this relates to all other things that you could do for your bones. So obviously, having good some phosphorus in your diet, making sure that you're lifting and doing heavy resistance work, those types of things are all things that are beneficial to your bones and may have some protective effect with regards to shingles. Now, what I was able to find only really focused on these particular nutrients, but I think my mindset would be anything you can do to protect the quality and integrity of your bones is likely going to be protective for you overall. So I'm going to leave a couple of additional links in the show notes. I did spend a good bit of time writing up the show notes this time because I wanted to make sure that you could come back and see all of this, because we've talked through a lot of things in the 20 some odd minutes that I've been talking about this. And I know it's a lot of material, but there's a lot out there. So I gave a couple of links. The show notes are a lot deeper than what I would normally do for an episode like this, but I wanted to make sure that you had that as a resource. I was very interested for myself. So If you're wondering what my approach is going to be, is I'm probably going to look into some of the adaptogens and things that I can do to boost my immunity, particularly during the periods of time that I'm traveling. And I'll tell my family members about, my mother, so that they can prepare themselves. I think everyone in our family has had chickenpox, so we'll just validate that everyone has had chickenpox, and if not, I guess we'll deal with that on a case by case basis. But just realize that this is an ailment, a virus that affects a lot of people, and the older you get, the more likely you are to contract it. So if you've had chickenpox, other people in your family, that are your age or older, that have had chickenpox, this is a real thing. This is something for them to really be looking out, because it's not just a small percentage of people that this happens to. This is a very large percentage of people. The pain is real. The itching is real. The potential for bad effects to happen is real. And you just have to be aware and do the right things for your health, which might include the vaccine, might include the antivirals if you have an outbreak. Again, just make sure that you're doing the best to be a better you. I know shingles is not necessarily the easiest topic for me to say. Hope you enjoyed that podcast episode, but I do hope that you got something valuable out of it. And if you did, would you please share it with someone you think would get benefit from this information? When I went out and did some research on podcasts and blog posts and things that were on this topic, there was some material that was out there, but it does take a little bit of digging to really kind of get to the bottom of it. So I do hope you would share this episode with them, because I think there's a lot of value for a lot of people. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet with Paulette Sherman and discuss her book, The Book of Sacred Baths. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.